Hey there, welcome everyone. My name is Tina, and this is the Alignment Keys. And on this channel, I bring forward a celebrity who's crossed over to the other side, and we take this opportunity to walk through their soul contract, get lots of messages that they want to bring forward, and that way I can show you how the soul contract works in their lives as I use that in my practice to help people get into alignment with their soul's purpose. So again, thanks for those of you that are joining me, for my current subscribers, and welcome if you are just stopping by, hoping that you will subscribe, as I will be bringing forward more celebrities and showing you the different aspects of their contracts. So today we have a wonderful, again, another rock star. I just did Jim Morrison last week. If you haven't seen that, you might want to take a peek, because we're bringing forward another rock god, or however you want to say, these front men who have this great magnetic energy, and they created these wonderful personas, or this created this, it's just, you can't even explain it. And Michael Hutchence was no different. He again, I he came in after Jim Morrison, and I didn't realize that after I listened to some interviews with him, that he had been compared a lot to Jim Morrison, and I can see why. Not so much from there were some similarities to their soul contracts, but just that the persona, exuding the sexuality and this charisma and this magnetism that these gentlemen had. And so again, I'd like to, bring forward him, and then we can kind of talk about, because of course he was his own person and had his own dreams and goals and aspirations. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Had a lot of struggles, just like you or I. I don't bring forward celebrities to put them on any pedestals. It's really about bringing forward the humanness that they were, because again, they were just a person just like you or I. It's not about idolizing anybody. We don't do that on this channel. We're going to look at them from a very human perspective. These are people with feelings, and had loved ones who supported them. And since I started to do this video, I have been hearing nothing but sirens, and he's, when he came forward, and now he's kind of laughing about that, because he's like, yeah, it was very much this this energy of you know just going off the rails, is what he's trying to say, going off the rails, losing control. So we're gonna talk about that, and what happens, in the charts, and what was going on with him at a deep level, so that we can kind of understand others' journeys. And then when we take a look at our own soul contracts, again, you can get a better feeling for maybe what's going on in your life. So if you want to know more about how I put the charts together, I always put a short introductory video in the description box below, and that way you can kind of see how I put them together, in a little history about the soul contract, so you can get a basic understanding. So I always ask people to watch that. And you can always there's a website to download your own free soul contract. I'll put that also in the description box below. So if you would like to look at your own soul contract and kind of see what that's all about. And then if you're looking at some of these celebrities, you might pick up a few things about maybe what was manifesting for you as well in your soul contract. If you would like a personal reading, I'll put that also in the description box below, and you can do that to my website, and only through my website. I don't contact anybody. And just so you know, I know there's a lot of scammers on YouTube. So you have to book through through my the website. So go ahead and check that out if you get a chance. So without further ado, let's bring forward Mr. Michael Hutchence, formerly of the band INXS. That may say a lot, right, about what was going on with him. He led kind of a little bit of that rock and roll lifestyle that we see with so many of these frontmen. And again, if looking at, hang on, I'm going to annotate my mouse here so you can see where I'm at the screen. So this was his birth name, and if you know, been with me before, you know the soul contract is based on our birth name, and the name is translated into Hebrew, which correlates to numbers, and numbers are what drives our energies and the things that create our reality here and how we manifest in the physical plane. And so we're given these great aspects, a physical triangle. Again, this kind of starts to play out for us very early, since we're spiritual beings and we come down to the physical plane and we start to manifest in this 3D environment. And then we have our spiritual triangle, because again, the whole purpose of us incarnating here is to play out these roles and to learn from them and to ascend. So we know the veil's put over us. We don't remember a lot of our past lives, even though at a deep soul level, we do remember that. And those, so we do carry a lot of knowledge. And I call a lot of these people like Michael Hutchence and other celebrities that I've done, a lot of them are older souls. They bring forward a lot of knowledge. They have these high achievements at very young ages because they can work through their numbers fairly quickly. Now, on the other hand, they also bring forward a pretty heavy pain body or karmic side. And we all have karma, and it's not a punishment from a past life or anything. It's something you actually choose, because the karmic side is what brings forward challenges so that you can grow. None of us are here without our challenges, and we pick our challenges. It's not something that was put on us as a punishment. It's what I call our opportunities for growth. And then of course we're giving talents as well, you know, and like I said, this other knowledge that we bring forward, and we have goals, and these are things that get us out of bed in the morning, a physical goal, a spiritual goal, and then we have our soul destiny, which is a combination of all the numbers, drives and kind of an overarching theme of why we came here in this particular lifetime. For Michael, he has, as you can first see, got a lot of these, what I call double numbers. And so in some of the aspects, you'll see a blended energy where there's two numbers. It gives people more energies to draw off of. And when you see somebody with a lot of double numbers here, they can have a very little bit of a restricted kind of a pretty narrow pathway here, because they don't have a lot of energies to draw off of. And I see that in some celebrities. Prince was one. He was also a dominant 7, so he would be heavily exposed to those energies as well. And this doesn't mean that makes you a star, a rock and roll star, because all of that, like I said, is part of a bigger plan with your soul family and with a bigger group. So it's not necessarily about, you could have a lot of 7s in your chart, and it doesn't mean you're going to be a rock god, you know, like these gentlemen were. But again, it's part of the experience. And of course, it depends on how conscious you are. And that means how many lifetimes you lived, how much you can work outside of the ego. And one of the things that Michael had said is that when he went out on stage, that he was playing this part. And sevens, we talk a lot about that because they're what we is this Gemini energy. It's all about the hidden self. And so they split almost into two peoples, this public persona, and then they have a personal persona. And so it's really in this lifetime was for him to come integrate those two and to come out as his authentic self. And so he was working on that towards the end of his life, but he had some things that he was going through that caused some pitfalls, as we all, there's no judgment on that from my perspective and from his as well. These were all lessons learned. You know, they get much clarity, obviously, when they're on the other side. And so they get that life review and they get to see, you know, what happened and what pitfalls. So when they decide if it's, you know, if they're in for another incarnation, then they can kind of add that all together and see what they might want to try to come forward to try again and try some different things. And it's, again, all about your soul family as well, the people that you incarnate that help you along your journey. And that can be blood relatives, as well as for him, part of it was his band family, the INXS. And so that was very important to Michael, because we're going to talk first about this physical side of his chart. And for Michael, he came here, this 11-2, and this is where he gets this great, he's a very beautiful man. And that's very much 11-2s. I talk about this, are very Venus energy. They have this, if you look at him, he's got a very feminine quality, very pretty. I would call like a pretty boy, right? Quality to him. He's going, I probably wouldn't have liked that, you saying that, but he gets that now. And so the 11-2 is tied to the eyes. He had these very deep, soulful eyes, and again, when you have all of these sevens are very magnetic. And when you have a 7 in talents, and particularly if you have a 7 in your physical goals, it is ultra magnetic. People are drawn to you. And you can tell when you're seeing, when he's interviewed, even with the band, and when he's around other people, even the interviewers, everybody is like just zoomed in on him. And so it was something, again, this was part of their path as a group to come together, for him to have this magnetism, but for him to also understand the importance of the others around him. And he had a pretty great grounded energy about that, you know. And he didn't just talk about himself, and he didn't make it all about himself, even though he got the most attention out of all them. He knew he was part of a group. And that's what sevens, when you have a 7 in talents, that's all about being a team player, facilitating groups, but they have to work through their controlling aspects as well, because 7s can be very controlling. So it's not about controlling people, it's about working together. And he did have this great relationship with one of the Ferris brothers, which was 3 brothers. And then there were these 3 other guys that formed the band INXS. And he had this wonderful relationship as a writer with one of the other band members. They definitely clicked very well together. And the reason why that was too was also, when you have an 11-2 in karma, you get a lot of the negative aspects of the 11-2. So he talked about, you know, having trouble with his eyes. 11-2s are tied to the eyes. And again, I said there's beautiful eyes, but because it was in a karmic, he would have a hard time. When you have issues with your eyes, the emotional component to that is, you know, whether you end up with glasses or a physical injury or something, is they really have, you know, they're very hypersensitive people. And so it's very hard for them, and it can be very hard for them in the 3D world to be able to really see things as they are, because they're so sensitive. And so he talked about, people were like, why are you so confident on stage? Where do you get that from? And he was like, well, I can't see anything. For one thing, I tried contacts and that didn't really work for me. And he's like, so for him, it was like he couldn't really see, so he could just get into his own world and do his own thing up there. Excuse me. I'm, all of a sudden, I'm having a throat chakra issue. And so he also is saying, again, it helped him with his expressing himself because of that hypersensitivity. And so, yeah, that's why he was kind of closing down my throat chakra. So that was able for him to finally to come out and to sing and to be front and center, because actually he was a very shy and sensitive person. And so this was something, again, sevens, because, you know, the talents act as a balancing mechanism to bring you from this negative side to the positive side of the karma, and then help you to achieve your physical goals. And so what are the physical goals to the sevens? Well, for Michael, this was about, again, facilitating groups, catalyzing change in people through his music, and in particular for him. So writing and sharing and connecting with others. Sevens are all about the heart, healing the heart and connecting with others through the heart. And this, you know, in his lifetime, this is what it was for him, was this heart healing. And of course, that comes with some negative things, because that's what opens us up, you know, in the heart the most. And so again, when I see somebody with this many sevens in their chart, I ask the question, did anybody really know you at a deep level? And he said very few people did know him at a deep level, because sevens believe at a very deep level that there's something wrong with them, or that they're bad. And so they have this really hard ability to trust and to be able to share. And so they have to have this super safe environment to be able to share their deepest thoughts and beliefs. And of course, that's what that's all about, is learning how to be your authentic self, learning how to share your thoughts and beliefs with others, because you have a lot to offer. And so it's gaining that trust in yourself, and that you have a lot to share, and then sharing with others, so others can learn and grow from your experiences, because we're meant to learn and grow from each other. So the 11-2, the other issues with this is going to, part of this karma that we're talking about here is he could be very codependent. So for him to grow, 11-2s tend to become dependent on others. It's a very codependent number, because they're so sensitive, and they lack structure, because it's a number all about structure as well. And so I've mentioned this before, they come as open containers. So they leave behind our normal structures of learning. Like, I have a very logical, analytical mind, and I can learn like other people learn, and but an 11-2, they wouldn't learn like other people learn. And that's because they're meant to think outside of the box. They're meant to build their own structure, we call it their own structure of truth, what's important to them, what they believe. And so they're not given the talents to help them learn like other people. That's kind of taken away from them in this lifetime. And so they might struggle in school, because school is so structured to learning in one capacity. And so he could have learning difficulties in that way. This means, though having an 11-2 in your chart means you're very highly intelligent. That's not the case that he was super intelligent. People have called him very much a genius, and we'll get to where the genius part comes in. But again, the 11-2s, again, they can become codependent. So for him to grow, it really was pivotal for him to be in this band with so many friends. These were school friends that he could trust and rely on, and that would be what could help him grow. So this was very important for his growth and his success, was to be in this band. then he was meant to kind of grow out of that, which he was working on that. First, he took on a different persona, because sevens, remember, they can, David Bowie's a great one to watch about sevens with taking on different personas and becoming different personalities, because again, he had the persona Michael Hutchence, and then he would and that was when he could put on his leather pants or whatever and be this rocker, like he said, and play this egoic sexual, everybody wanted him to be the sex symbol. He would go out and play that part. And then he did this Max Q album, which was his first album outside of INXS by himself, which he collaborated with someone else. Again, this dependency on having somebody else. But he did end up doing, before he died, album of his own of him writing and his songs. So that was the start. Remember, we're talking about one of his purposes was to integrate and to become that individual. Now, it's not meant that he, again, he was learning about that team building and co-creating and all of that wonderful stuff through the band. So that was a pivotal, like I said, it was so pivotal for him to have that experience, for him to start to grow as an artist, to grow and start to gain that confidence for himself. And so the other thing that the 11 twos that I want to mention about was, this is where he got his moodiness from, and his the twos are very high, low emotional. They can be very manic depressive. He did commit suicide. And he talks about being in a very dark place when this happened. And as I watched his interviews and to that time period, I could feel the darkness. And he was working through, as we all do in these lifetimes, there comes a point when we start working through our shadow side. And so he was in the depths of working through his shadow side. When you're doing that, it's all about 11 twos are all about this transformational energy. And so it was for him to break out of an old self and to come into the new self. And so what causes an issue, with that was, again, taking on dysfunctional patterns of others. This is not blaming others. We do not blame. We take full responsibility for our lives and what we create in it, because we are the creators of our reality. And, that's just giving your power away, is to blame others and be in any type of a victim part. When he came together with Paula Yates, he was in a very unstable position. And when you're in an unstable position, you vibrate to unstable. So the people we vibrate together with or come together with in relationships, they're at our emotional frequency at the time. And so this was not a good time for him, as we all know, but it was part of his growth process, and he was meant to overcome this, as well as, at least this is what I'm getting from him, is that he was meant to overcome this aspect of the karmic and that codependency. So what was going on with him is a few years, and I don't know if it was a few years, so I don't have all the dates written down, but he was with another model, and he ended up getting in an altercation with somebody who punched him in the face, and he fell and he hit his head and got a concussion. This was before he met Paula Yates, but this is where people were saying he had this big change going on within him. And so this was after a big tour, or remember when when you like he was talking about, when you do the things that you love, their goal was never, maybe the ultimate goal in the back of their minds was, oh, if we get to be rock stars or whatever, because I know they modeled kind of their, from listening to their interviews and just kind of what I was feeling from Michael, they had modeled their band career over AC/DC's, kind of how it takes many years. This was never overnight success. It took a while for again, the name INXS to come, which was pivotal for their success, because again, remember, your names have energy, and the names that you choose, you know, this is why famous singers like David Bowie, he was David Jones, but chose David Bowie. Why these name changes come into our lives is because it adds another layer of energies that help us to grow. And when they were ready to start growing, they ended up, another band told them, you guys should be called this, INXS, and it was, they were thinking about it as inaccessible, but it actually said in excess, right? And so that's really where they really took off. And yeah, the vibrations of that name was super for success, and what they were looking for in a band name. That would be very, very highly, you know, your name is really important for your success. So that was super helpful. But again, it was all about doing what you love to do, and how he wants me to convey that to you, how important it is to not, and he says this in a lot of interviews, if you listen to him, he was a very deep person. There was a high level of consciousness, even though he struggled with what was really, you know, the twos, when I've talked about this, and especially I think in Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter's chart, is it can very much cloud your judgment. Misuse of abilities comes from the 11-2. And again, this emotional highs and lows. So it's, you know, all about learning. He has great talents for that, because the 7s are all about objectivity and learning to give him that emotional resilience and to be objective and see things from different perspectives. And then the 11-2 can help him to see the truth of things, because 7s can sometimes be in dreamland and not in reality. And so this helped give him a way to, again, see the truth of what was going on, so he could make good decisions, because 7s are all about being action oriented and making good decisions as well in his career and in his life. Now, again, with this being karma, I said it can also be not making very good decisions. So again, we talked about he had this accident and the concussion. And so any type of accident is never an accident. It always has an emotional component to it. Like if you get into a car accident, it usually stems from your meeting up with somebody who has a very similar pain body, similar vibration as you, and then you end up playing out something together. And it's all vibrational, it's not personal, and so this is the kind of things that cause accidents. So he ended up in this altercation with this taxi driver, got hit, punched in the face, knocked over, got this concussion. And so when we look at what is a concussion, what is the emotional side of a concussion, and this is somebody who is very overwhelmed, feeling very burdened. Again, you know, because remember, the pressures of all of this high success really gets to people. And he was at the end of a tour, he was feeling very exhausted. And this is exactly what, when I read in my book, you know, which I love, I have it here, as a matter of fact, and I wanted to read it for it. So he got a concussion, and it's Messages from the Body and Their Psychological Meaning, and it's by Michael J. Lincoln, PhD. I highly recommend this book for any type of healers out there. So the concussion is the brain bruise, and it's they're feeling traumatically over-demanded, overburdened, and overwhelmed. They feel at some level that they no longer have the wherewithal to rise to the requirements of the situation, and they are unwilling to continue with the impossible responsibilities they face. So this is what we call a staged walkout, a new development for them, in that they have always it's some deprivation or punishment at a subconscious. We talk about the 7s and having this feeling that there's something bad about them, and so they consider it as a deserved punishment for being a moral cretin because of his again, having all of these sexual encounters with women and things which society puts on you as, being very moral, not morally correct. And so it's a pattern. It says it starts from having to be very left to the, not having it, nothing bad about his parents. Again, this is not about blame, but really having to be left to his own devices as a child and learning, it can be overwhelming. Again, 11-2s feel very lost. And if they don't have the right parental support, they can, again, this is trauma coming out when he's starting again to work through some of the shadow side and starting to work actually through the spiritual side of his chart. Because as we get to middle, to about, he was 37 when he died, which adds up to 10, which, got a lot of sevens here going on. And this was all about, for him, 3 + 7 is 10, and 10 is all about karmic cycle. So he's playing out some karmic cycle, that was, ended up, killing, can end up killing you in this lifetime because you're not taking the care, you're not doing the healing, you're not. And again, he was starting to hit into the spiritual side of his chart pretty deeply. And so he was getting really badly. 6s are in your spiritual goals are really about, you don't have 100% free will there. This is where all of this wonderful creativity comes from. It's a direct connection to source. He's basically channeling, which we all do. It's all connected to the greater energy. So our egos like to think it's us doing it all and blah, 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 me, the little me. But this is where he could, 6s are what we call the convertible knot, and they can make something out of nothing. So when his writing process, and so 5s, I do want to mention, are all about writing. 5s are great. To have that in talents is all about being a great writer, creative writing, being very psychic. And it comes through your writing. And so he had this, again, great energies here for that creative process that he was. And so what he would do, which was a little bit unique and part of his genius, was to have, this was not, like I said, this wasn't 100% free will. He was creating from the soul. So he could literally think of the musical aspect, and this is on his website. I'll put a link to it. And I found this super fascinating because of his creative process. And if you're have anything similar in his chart, you might be able to learn what his creative process is and replicate, some things for whatever you're trying to create. And so for him, he could actually listen to the music, and then he developed the music part first, and then he would almost have this sounds, and it wasn't even words. He would like hum and part words, and so then he would put that together, and then all of a sudden the words would evolve. And it was really cool how it showed his process of how he wrote these songs with one of the Ferris brothers. They usually worked in tandem because whatever Michael was trying to get, I think it was Andrew Ferris, I'm not sure which one, but anyways, he would think of the other aspect of it, and between the two of them, they would collaborate these wonderful songs, and it would just flow, and it kind of showed his process. I thought that was really fascinating, and really showed me that creative process of the 6s. It's extremely highly genius level when you get 6s in the spiritual goals. It gives you such a great capacity to create. And then we talked about the 5s. Now we want to talk about the 5s here because the 5s are also a very sensitive number. And again, he was starting to go through a lot of his spiritual, as we get older, our spiritual energies start to work through. And so we get, even though this is in talents, I talk about this, we get a lot of the negative numbers coming through. And with 5s, they can get very negative in their expression, and they need a lot of space clearing, because especially when you have an 11-2 in karma, you have to be able to get rid of other people's patterns that they're putting on you that you don't even know, because fives are very sensitive to other people's energy. This makes him probably super empathic. Again, being sevens and being able to open his heart, you can take on a lot of other people's energy, which can make him very off balance. At 11-2s, remember I said he became very unstable, and then we talked about the injury. The sixes brought out anger, frustration. That's all tied to the sixes. And so then he became very moody around people and almost physically violent. And this was part of this shadow side coming through. This emotional trauma that he's ready to purge was all playing out in a lot of this. And then he was very bonded with his daughter, who was very young, and he was not able to see her, and it just created this really dark, he was just started to spiral over the last few years. And so this is kind of a culmination of, again, someone who's so sensitive but yet doesn't know the type of practices to integrate to help him manage his numbers. And so he, unfortunately, his big thing is now he left a child, orphaned, because Paula ended up overdosing, a year or so later. And so here they have this child who ended up getting adopted by Paula's ex-husband because of the her three half sisters, so that she could be raised with her other sisters. And so that's very, for him, that's his biggest regret, is not doing the work in a safe way. Because when sixes are tied to addictions as part of what we come here to work on, but not really getting out of sorts and drawing in a lot of dark energy. Because even looking at him towards the end, his hair was like dyed really super dark, and it just, so his Elegantly Wasted was the 10th album that he made, the final album with the INXS, which again we talk about 10 as being the ending of a karmic cycle. And the room number 524 is the room he was found in dead, which adds up to 11, which means 11 is tied to that karmic 11 we see here, and it's the ending, because 11s, remember we talked about these cycles, relationship cycles, the cycles of a song, the cycles. So he was here to learn all about cycles in a positive way, how to let go of the past. And so he really was struggling towards the end, and that very much can happen, and then we can end up getting in a very bad place. Fives, like I said, in that negative aspect, fives, like I said, they can, taking on a lot of psychic energy, as being around Paula, who was fighting with her ex all the time and taking on all this dysfunction for somebody who is so hypersensitive. And then he had that accident, which was trying to clear out a lot of trauma, and just spiraled. And, people had said he really spiraled. So he never really got to integrate himself and really heal. He did a lot of the work, but again, this is what can happen. This is a tough place down here. There's no judgment on it. And I thought it was really interesting. One of the songs that before he met Paula, he was titled Suicide Blonde. And if you just look at kind of the trajectory of this Elegantly Wasted, kind of talking about what was going on at a kind of maybe a conscious level, but not doing anything about it. He knew, I had seen, he talked a lot about the drugs and not wanting to be that. But like I said, the judgment gets clouded, and sometimes they just think the hidden self with these sevens are just not in reality, that it can happen to them, that they can be they can do very foolish things. And that's what this 2 is all about. It's foolishness to wisdom, and it's making very foolish judgments with our life. And it's the 11-2s when you have it in karmic are you're meant to come into how valuing life and how precious life is. And 5s are all about taking care of your body and eating properly and listening to it so that you can live a healthy, active life. It doesn't mean, people can eat badly and still live a long life, but it's quality of life. This is about valuing life and the quality of the life that you had. And he had mentioned about how he also felt like a piece of meat, the whole sex thing and the meat market. It's great, and it seems like everybody wants that, to be, 5s can be very much people pleasers, so they're looking for that the adoration from others. And he talked about that being a drug, right? Getting that attention. But then all of a sudden you realize that they don't even know who you are. He's like, it really wears thin, I think was his exact words, because they don't know who you are. They don't love you at a deep level. And when you have 7s, they're looking for this love. They're looking for this heart healing. And so it's so superficial that it goes against what their soul is for here. And so that causes a lot of issues as well, because you get out of alignment when you're not in alignment with your soul path. And so playing that part and people using you and you using them, that's not what this experience is. It's about going deeper and that consciousness and helping each other and connecting. And a lot of those things he was doing, it was not all, he loved being on stage, he loved performing, and he was the first one into the studio. His work ethic was there because he loved that part of it, writing songs, and that was really when he was in alignment. Now, if we could have got him on a good spiritual practice, and I'm not talking religion. There was one aspect, actually, their manager was trying to get them. He had seen this Billy, what was his name? That evangelist, and he wanted these guys to be a Christian band and to talk about Christianity, and they did think about it, and then they were kind of like, no. They did end up writing some really good music, like Original Sin and The Devil Inside. I mean, those are, again, connecting with what everyone is struggling with, and he's an example, and he's here because he wants people to learn from his mistakes, and even if you're living it, you can change. There's a lot of rock stars who've cleaned up, and they're still doing what they love, and they're adding value and becoming more conscious of their path and what they came here to ascend to do. But so I do want to pull a few cards, and I do want to go to the hidden realms, because he did have the 7s, that deep hidden self that he did not show. Oh, and so what comes up is 19 here, which adds up to 20. 2 is really about your spiritual path. And the 2, again, we have that emotional, right? Karmic 2. I'm gonna actually, and so the Desert Prince, and I'm gonna stop sharing here because I want you to see this card. So here's this card, and you can see this young man with his shirt off, the Desert Prince with the lion behind him, gorgeous, right? He's got it all. But this is survival and false promises. So really understanding that the superficiality of that is what he's trying to say. I'm going to pull another card from this deck. He likes this deck too, and that is, that beautiful magnetic, getting out of the survival mode, just, that's that spirituality, trusting it with the flow, and so what comes out next is, you know, he was a very sensitive soul, and so this is the sacred union. And we just talked about that sex, he talked about that superficiality, the meat market, and he said he really could sympathize with women because he said he got a real glimpse at what women that being hit on all the time, and you know, men wanting to sleep with you. And so he said he could really empathize and could be very compassionate. And so this is partnership and romance. And again, you can kind of see it's very beautiful. And that's the coming together of the masculine and the feminine that we all have. And they also had a song called She Rising, or it was about, and to me it really symbolized that, because that's within us all, the female and the male, balancing those two components. Because again, that the female side is a creative side, you know, we can create babies, great creators, and then the masculine side is that will and taking the appropriate action. And so here we've got security, and this came up again, the survival in this card. And so we have to be careful about doing things for security and not following our passions, right? Keeping that job because it that we hate because it gives us a sense of security, because there is no security. There is no real security. It's a no security. He's saying it's an illusion, illusion, illusion is what I'm hearing from him. And you can see there's this artistry in the background here that I'm being drawn to with the heavens, being a creator, not just doing what people think you should do. So I am being drawn to, he wants to do the archetype cards, and I was curious as to what this would bring out for him. Oh, yeah, this is so him. You guys, Don Juan, right? Don Juan. So light attribute is spotlighting your positive, seductive qualities, because that's, you know, we are sexual beings and there's nothing wrong with being sexual at all. It's how we create life. It's, you know, so it's definitely a positive thing. Where it becomes the shadow attribute is using the power of romance, romantic attraction for private agendas, and that's that self gratification and self, you know, and I think this is wonderful because there's music here in the back, you know, music being used as a tool, either for that positive, seductive, you know, you can play music and it feels so loving and connects you to another, but then being careful of using it again against others. So it's that balance, and I love that he's so open to bringing that out in this reading about that sexuality piece, because I think it's super, super important. So we're going to go to the work your light. And like I said, it's, and so for him, he was saying, he was going through an initiation, is what you can see, all this darkness, and then there's the portal. And sorry, my lighting is not the best. Since I'm in my new place, I do have to play around with it a little bit. So this is rite of passage, crossing the threshold. And so again, we all have the rite of passage to go through the dark times, to go through the challenges, and we're all meant to come out to the other side. He's saying we're all meant to. Intuition is a big part of it. There's a lot of fire in this, you know, survival, and that's a very root chakra energy. And so if that gets blocked and you're focused too much on that, you know, it burns you out. And so you need to open that up so that you can use some of the other wonderful chakras and make sure it's flowing. So we're going to go to the secret language of light. And this one is, here's another 2 and 21, 2 and 1 is soul tree. And so I talked about that, right? That there's more going on here than just our soul. And this one, he wants me to read the soul tree here. So this is trees are filled. So trees are filled with wisdom. And 11 and 2, we talked about, you know, his foolishness to wisdom, right? So you're becoming more connected to nature. Trees are great holders of wisdom and knowledge. Next time you are near a tree, try asking it what it would like you to know and listen with an open heart for an inspired response. The same life force that animates you also flows through the trees. We are all in this together. Now imagine the trees are physical manifestations of angels. Their divine essence flows deep into trees as angels are far-reaching in their ability to help, care, and create. Trees, like angels, see and feel without judgment, always emanating an eternal stream of love. Allow angelic tree energy to flow through you, sending roots deep into the ground, forming a solid foundation that enables you to reach higher and deeper into the light and the soul of you. From this vantage point, you can sculpt your ideas and dreams to be planted upon the earth for you to enjoy through your physical senses. Wow. So again, he's planted trees so that humans and trees can co-create for generations to come. Research the Cabal and the Tree of Life as another way to experience your spiritual self. And find a tree in the distance, close your eyes and ask it to show you its aura. Sense any colors or feelings. Open your eyes and take note of what you see. If nothing comes, try again later. That was awesome. Connecting to nature, which is a gift. I am going to go to the Elemental Oracle. Ooh, hang on. So this one wanted to come out, which is, I ran it over with didn't take long for that to fall out. I ran it over with my wheel. This is number 42, which adds up to a 6 in his spiritual goals. And this is movement, speed. And so this is this, you know, flying high. I'm going to look at what we got going on here. Savor the experiences of your life. Be mindful and aware of the speed in which you do activities such as eating and working. Do not waste time, but understand the discernment of taking quality time. Wow, that's really great advice, right? Taking quality time. You know, I worked for a company and one of they had these sayings that, you know, values, company values, and one of it was speed matters. And I did not really like that because as I'm an accountant, I've been a CPA during my day job. And for me, I kind of understood that, you know, speed matters, but it's still, to do quality work still requires presence. And, you know, especially in accounting, it isn't being as fast as you can go. It's, you know, valuing time without rushing through things. I didn't really care for it because I felt like it was conflicting to me, in that, you know, we need to always be rushing and doing. And it's really important. And I'm getting a download here from Michael where he says, if you're doing all the time, the great creative ideas come from the listening part. And so he could go into the studio and he could just really block out all of the nonsense. 5s are really good at that anyways. I'm a 5 too, and I can block out a lot of chaos if I have to in order to focus, because when you have a 6 in your chart too, you can have a lot of projects going on. You have to be very cognizant of that as well, because it's meant for you in a goal, especially a spiritual goal, is to learn how to focus. And so for him, it was learning about how to focus on staying present, focusing on what you were doing without getting, looking in the past or being too far in the future, and just enjoying what you're doing at the moment. He talks about that a lot in some of his interviews. And he talked about when he did the Max Q thing, I think it was called, that persona. And he said, I didn't even tell my other bandmates that I was doing it. And it was just like another stream of consciousness was trying to work its way through me. And I thought that was really, for someone to say that, I'm like, boy, he really was very deep. And again, he had that hidden self. So we didn't get to see a lot of that side of him. But the other card that just came out in my sacred geometry was empowerment. And this is a 26. It adds up to 8s, and 8s are all about grounding your ideas. And again, he's got the 2 and the 6 here, so it's a combination of that wisdom coupled with the creativity, right? And so the frequency of empowerment supports our ability to show up fully and completely, like we were talking about, uniting us with others in the deep trust that we are all connected through the same source. And so that's him, and his band had a great relationship. Like I said, there was a deep respect for each other's opinions, and he talked about, not that they were conscious of the ego and making sure that the ego was checked, right? Not letting one person's ego, because we see that in a lot of bands, especially with a front man. I mean, you pick a front man. I mean, I'd do a soul contract and be like, this is your front man, to have somebody like Michael Hutchence, because of all the 7s and the magnetism and the facilitating groups and learning all of that wonderful, just as a show person. He's got, they make great actors, and then he had the great writing number, and then the 6s with that that create the super creative energy. So so I am going to pull one final healing mantra from the Matcon healing deck, something that there was 2 of them that he wanted me, that came out. And so one is grounding his energy, because when you have 5s in your chart and you've got that 11 2s with the ups and downs, he could be very ungrounded at times. And so a mantra that can be very healing would be to say, it is safe to be in my body. It is safe to be in my body. It is safe to be in my body. So the mantras, usually I say them 3 times, and you say them frequently to help you overcome whatever it is that you are working on. And the other one is encountering conflict. So he was really struggling with a lot of conflict, and that inner conflict, again, he was working through purging a lot of that shadow side. And so we have a lot of conflict going on in the world. So he's like, this is a perfect mantra for everybody, with everything, all of the separateness that's going on. And he wants to talk about, he was an Aquarius, and we're coming into the Aquarian age as well. And that Aquarian age is all about us maintaining our individuality while working in groups. So it's not losing yourself in others. So that's why we're seeing more of the individuals coming out. And then Aquarian energy is very idealistic, and that's a wonderful new place, I think, that we're going. And so the mantra for encountering conflict is, I don't choose sides, I take a stand. And so that's taking a stand on your beliefs without causing more separate, by saying, I'm with them and I'm against them. It's, no, this is what I believe. And then listening to what others believe, and without shame, without judgment, and just respecting their opinion. We need to become better listeners. so that he wanted me to leave with you as well. So I'm going to end this video. I enjoyed so much bringing through Michael and getting to know his energy. I did not know, again, INXS wasn't someone, I do kind of remember there seeing him and liking some of his music, because that was kind of during my the 80s and 90s. You know, I had also just graduated high school, and so it was kind of my era. He was, I think, about 4 years older than me, so it's kind of the same type of we kind of grew up in the same type of environment. So I totally can relate to him as a person, knowing, you know, he was probably raised in similarities, you know, from that generation. So I'm thanking him for coming through and being available to let me walk through his soul contract with you all. I hope you enjoyed it. And please subscribe, it's free. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for being here.